Hey, Larken Rose here, doing a video on the top 7 reasons why voluntarists might not be considering going to a Candles in the Dark event. Number 1. What the heck is Candles in the Dark? Well, if you haven't even heard of it and don't know what it is, in short, it's a 2-day course that teaches anarchists and voluntarists how to be way more effective at communicating with statists and having them actually hear the message without getting defensive and combative and freaking out and closing their ears and running the other way. Now, if you haven't heard of it, I will put a link below to a video that explains a lot more about it and the approach and what all it does. But that's the general gist of it. Reason number 2. Oh, I've already seen Larken debate. I already understand his methods. If you're assuming this, don't assume that. What I do in public when I debate, whether it's in person or online or whatever, is a completely different method from what I teach in Candles in the Dark, because it's a completely different target audience and a completely different goal in mind. Like when I'm debating somebody in person, I'm not actually trying to have a discussion with them and convince them, because who in a debate, like a debate in front of an audience, ends up going, "You're totally right, never mind, I changed my mind." The spectators are always my target audience when I do a public debate. This is about having one-on-one discussions with statists, including like people in your life, in your family, coworkers, people who you have to deal with on a daily basis, and you're sort of frustrated that they still believe in all the political mythology they were taught. So no, if you've seen me debate, that has nothing to do with what I do in Candles in the Dark. In fact, one of the first things I say is, don't do it in front of an audience, because that will make them feel defensive. It'll feel like they're in a combat that they have to win, and then they're not going to be open. They're not going to be like having a personal discussion with you. They're going to be, having a fight with you, and that won't accomplish anything. Their brain will shut down. They're going to put up walls, or they're going to run away. It won't accomplish anything. So yeah, that's why almost nobody has seen me actually use these methods in public, because I don't use them in public. And so, yeah, if you're assuming that the way I debate is what I'm going to be teaching, no, it's nothing like that. Reason number 3. I don't need that. My arguments are already perfectly clear and logical. This may be totally true, and it totally doesn't matter. As you may have noticed, as I know a lot of anarchists have realized, having clear logic and evidence and proof and all that good stuff isn't enough. It doesn't get through to most people. Yeah, there's a small segment of society that's the intellectuals that likes to philosophize and reason and debate concepts and all this. That isn't most people. And if you approach most people expecting them to be that way and expecting them to communicate that way, you're going to be frustrated over and over and over again. So the fact that you may have perfectly clear logical arguments is not enough to actually get through to people, because you're up against an indoctrinated belief. And a logical explanation of why somebody's faith-based belief that they've believed their whole lives, why it's irrational, is not going to make most people doubt it or consider it or question it at all. You need more than just evidence and logic. So reason number 4. Oh, all the statists I know are hopeless anyway. I sympathize with those who feel like that, who feel like, the statists I know, they're just all totally hopeless. There's no way to get through to them. And I felt like that for a long time. I've been an anarchist now for over 20 years, and it took me ages to learn the stuff about psychology that made me realize they aren't hopeless. Every once in a while there's one that I go, yeah, you're not worth my time, I'm going to go find somebody else. It's not like there's a shortage of statists in the world to talk to, but the vast majority are not hopeless. There are ways to get through to them. However, they are not ways that come naturally to anybody I know, myself included. They are methods that, well, it's the reason I teach a class on it, because they're methods that you can learn. You can train yourself to have a different approach, which will have different results, but it isn't what just comes easily to people, myself included. But if you think that everybody's hopeless, it's probably because you've used the same method over and over again and it doesn't work. Well, if you did that on your car, well, every time my car stalls out, I hit it with a wrench and it never fixes. Maybe do something other than hit it with a wrench. And this course is about what actually does work and what does get through to those hopeless statists. Maybe not every one, but a lot more than you probably expect if your usual approach is, I'm going to go debate with somebody and argue with them until they admit I'm right. Good luck with that. Reason number 5. I already understand the psychology of statists. I tend to doubt that with most people. It took me decades just to get to the understanding of the psychology of statists, despite having been one for many years myself, to get to the point where I understand enough of what's going on in their brain to understand how to not set off all the triggers. And not, it's like trying to tiptoe through a minefield to get a statist to actually hear it without getting defensive and say, what about the roads? Or you just want chaos, and then run away. But even if you do, even if you're right and you do understand their psychology, that's only half of the equation, and by itself that's worthless. You need to understand and keep an eye on your own psychology and what's going on in here, because the way you approach them, the way you view the conversation, the way you view them, the way you view the purpose of the discussion, all of that has a huge impact on how you're going to come across to them. And I constantly watch anarchists and voluntarists argue with statists, and I realize neither side is hearing the other side. They might as well have a wall in between them, and they're just screwing. They're blah, 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 blah. You're not going to accomplish anything if you don't understand their psychology better than they do, and understand your own psychology and know how to keep it in check. Because if you're getting frustrated and combative and argumentative, that's going to make them be defensive. Until you understand and control your own psychology, the fact that you may or may not understand theirs doesn't matter. It doesn't fix the problem. Reason number 6. I've already tried everything. No, you haven't. You haven't tried everything. Now, again, I sympathize with the feeling, and having argued with statists, hundreds, thousands of statists over the last 20-some years, I can totally relate to the idea. I've tried all sorts of different approaches, different arguments, different ways to explain it, and it just nothing works. Trying everything within the paradigm of arguing and debating is not trying everything. That's trying this much of everything. And if you try this much of everything and you go, it never works, they don't listen, and they come back with these weird irrational tangents, it's an easy way to come to the conclusion that they're all stupid and irrational and there's no way to get through to them. That's not true. You haven't tried everything until you've tried methods like those I teach in Candles in the Dark. And because they are mostly focused on psychology, not so much the philosophy. I mean, the philosophy is pretty dang simple. Like, I own myself, you own yourself, let's not attack each other. How complicated is that? So why is that difficult to convey to people? It's because of the indoctrination. And when you have that level of indoctrination, you have to understand psychology, because it isn't just like deprogramming from someone who has been in a cult. It is deprogramming someone who's been in a cult. And there are whole books written on, what do I do with my family member who was raised in this cult? Like, if I just go to them and say, your beliefs are totally stupid, amazingly enough, they don't respond well to that, and they don't believe me, and they even cling tighter to their stupid beliefs. Because you need to know how to navigate their psychology and how to have your own psychology not set them off and make them cling tighter to their stupid belief system. Reason number 7. Well, why should I invest time and money when I don't even know if it'll do any good? Again, I sympathize. And to me, this is the biggest challenge, because if people don't know what's in it and don't understand the value they can get from it, yeah, why would they bother spending a weekend and $100 and some bucks doing something when they have no idea what they're going to get out of it? And that makes a challenge for me, because in 30 seconds, I can't tell you what you would get out of it, because if I could, it would be a 30-second video instead of a 2-day seminar or whatever you want to call it. So the only 2 things I can say, because yeah, it's a weekend, it's in $100 and some bucks per person. The only 2 things I can say are, first of all, the guarantee I already mentioned, that if you try it and you do it, after the fact, if you decide it didn't make you better, I give you your money back. But I can't give you your weekend back, don't have a time machine. So the only other thing I know to do is point you to testimonials from other people who have done it, who have done a Candles in the Dark event and then went and tried the methods and said, holy smokes, this really does give me significantly better results, and actually results in like calm, polite conversations with people that are even like friendly, and we're both joking instead of screaming at each other and running out of the room and calling each other names. So all I can do is money back guarantee and pointing you to people who've already done it and who explain what they learned from it and the results they've gotten from it. And so I'll end just by saying, if you're okay with just going online, arguing with people, and then knowing how right you are after they scream and run away, okay, you can do that for free. But if you understand the importance of the numbers game, of how many people we get to give up their authoritarian indoctrination, how many people we get to understand the concepts of self-ownership and non-aggression, and how that really does determine the future of mankind. Not to be melodramatic, but it does. The number of people who still believe in authoritarianism versus the number of people who give that up and actually want a free society, that is what determines whether we have a free society. So if you want 5 people in a basement knowing how right they are about all this, and the rest of the world is authoritarian, that's going to be a really ugly world. You can be totally right in your basement, still going to be an ugly world. So if you value the idea of being able to get other people to hear you, and I know the frustrations, I've argued with thousands of statists for decades, I know the frustrations and I know the feeling of, nah, I tried everything, it's impossible, you can't do it, there's no way. All I can say is try this and see if it doesn't give you a way better result to a degree you literally never imagined possible. Because I've already had people say that, like, I've argued this and over and over and over again. I never thought I would be having a calm discussion with my, friend, relative, coworker, whatever it is. And they'll say that about somebody they've argued with for 5 or 10 years. And then they go and they use these methods, and suddenly 5 minutes later, they're having a calm, rational discussion. And for the first time, the person's hearing them and understanding what they're saying. It's like, whoa, how did that happen? It really is possible to get results like that if you keep an eye on your psychology and you know how both weird, irrational brains are working and interacting, and you know how to not set off all the negative, combative garbage on either side. So break it down to that. What would it be worth to you if you were suddenly 10 times better at talking to people and helping them to escape their statist authoritarian indoctrination? Is that worth a weekend and $100 and some to you? If not, if you like to debate, okay, don't come to one of these. If it is, then find a way to get to a Candles in the Dark. And like I said, I can't give you your weekend back, but if after the fact you say, no, that didn't work, which oddly is not the response I'm getting, but if that's what you say, okay, give you your money back. But I think, every voluntarist understands how important it is to get lots and lots and lots of other people to give up the lie too. Because you know how frustrating it is living in a world of people who believe this lunacy. And that frustration is probably your biggest obstacle, because when you come across as frustrated and angry, and you've got to believe this, when you come across in evangelical mode, which I talk about a lot in Candles in the Dark, you will shut them down. You will make them put up walls. You will make them run away. And then you're like, but that's so important. It is so important. And that is why you need to learn to do it effectively, not emotionally, not out of desperation, not out of anger, none of that, but effectively. Candles in the Dark will actually show you how to do that. So find a way to get to one. You'll be glad you did.